Hey there, superstar. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to prevent employees from stealing from you. First, I'm going to get into why it's so important to be prepared to do this kind of work in your business. I'm also going to share a type of stealing that you may not even realize is stealing or that's going on at all. We're going to talk about ways to prevent it and what to do when it happens. There are so many reasons that it's helpful to prevent people from stealing from you. The most obvious is that you don't want to lose money. But something a little less obvious that I think is really important to bring forward is that when someone steals from you and once you get quote unquote bitten, you can be twice shy, meaning that it can start to hold you back from growth in your business. And maybe that's consciously hold you back, but more often I've seen that it can hold you back subconsciously, where you prevent yourself from being generous and open and giving away content and ideas because you're afraid that someone might take it from you, or that you're afraid of trusting someone, which means you're less likely to hire and delegate and leverage your time effectively. Another reason is that if you are constantly in a state of stress or anxiety about somebody taking from you, about an employee stealing, it can cause you to shut down and become defended and defensive. And that can really get in the way of your ability to attract clients and grow your business in that way. It can also negatively impact how you show up in marketing conversations and sales conversations if you're feeling like you can't grow or expand because you can't lean on your people, you can't trust them, you can't rely on them. There are a lot of ways that distrust and lack of being able to depend on your people can get in the way of your growth, your development, and your expansion. So before I dive into what you can do to prevent people from stealing from you, let's just talk about what stealing even looks like. There's the obvious, when somebody steals money. When they, maybe take from your bank account or embezzle funds, that's one very obvious method of stealing. But there are also smaller ways that it happens when people say fudge the numbers a little bit on expenses or something like that, or they, might just do something more in their favor than in your favor. So the money piece is pretty obvious. Another way that employees can steal from you is stealing clients. So it may have happened to you that in the past, or it might be happening right now, where someone is leaving you to start their own thing and they are pulling and taking clients with them. A third way that employees can steal from you is taking your intellectual property, taking your content, your IP, your strategies, your processes, your brand even, like using your phrases or statements that you've been using for years. And then finally, a way that sometimes people don't realize is stealing, but that can really have a detrimental impact on you and on your business is when employees steal your energy, when they suck away your energy, when you constantly have to be putting out fires or jumping in and changing something or fixing something they've done and they made a mistake. So that can steal not only your energy, but also your time. So that's kind of less recognized as a way that employees steal. And I think it's probably one of the most important ways because it goes unnoticed. And sometimes we as business owners don't realize how important that can be. Now, I do want to share just briefly why do I know about this? How can I talk about this? Well, I've had all of these experiences at one time or another. I've had employees that have stolen money. I've had employees that have stolen content. I've had employees that have tried to steal clients. I've had employees that have used my brand and used my intellectual property. And I've had employees that have taken my time and sucked my energy. So I've dealt with all of these things, and I can say that in this moment right now, I have the best team that I've ever had. I'm more supported than ever. And part of the reason for that is that not only have I let go of or have the people that used to do that, have they left the company, but I've also put in place what I'm going to share with you in order to prevent it from happening again. Now, the things that I'm going to share fall into a few different categories. So the first category is your own, or in my case, it was my own, energetic and mindset. So that's one way you can prevent people from stealing from you is number one, doing your own internal energetic mindset work. The second way is more strategic, and it's really related to how you hire, how you fire, how you align your team and your employees with your values, and how you emphasize those values and embody those values yourself, and how you lead your team. And the third are some tactical ways that you can do it by creating agreements and structures that support transparency and visibility. And finally, I will talk a little bit about what to do when you find out that someone has been stealing from you. All right, let's dive into this content. And before we get into that, I do want to invite you to take a moment, please, to like this video, subscribe to my channel so that you get notifications in YouTube about future videos that I release, and also consider maybe posting a comment or story below. So the first bucket, as I mentioned, is your own mindset. Now, what can happen, and I'm not going to dive deep into the law of attraction, but I will say that what we resist persists, meaning when we have anger, blame, shame, complaint, when we're holding frustration, fear, doubt, all of these energies, what we can end up attracting is more of the same. And so the first thing, without diving deeply into this, is to do the quote unquote alchemy on yourself of clearing out these emotions before you hire, before you lead, before you create agreements, before you basically do anything having to do with trusting employees. Do the work of clearing some of the old stories and wounds that you've suffered at the hands of employees who've stolen from you or lied to you or let you down. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go deep into this, but I do have videos about how to clear out your energy, how to create more positive energy, how to attract more good luck and wealth. And I highly recommend checking out one of my playlists all about energy and attraction and all of those good things. So first and foremost, getting clean and clear yourself so that you can show up neutral and so that you're not projecting these old stories onto new situations. If you find yourself always not trusting and doubting, even when people are being trustable, then chances are you've got to do that inner work for yourself. The second thing is more strategic. The second bucket of things you can do are strategic in the sense that I'm talking about how to create a team, how to hire people that are aligned with your values. Now, this may be easier said than done, and it requires starting to tap into intuition and starting to really trust your intuition. The reason I say that is because every single time that I discovered that someone was lying or stealing from me, it turns out I had intuition about it before I ever knew about it consciously. In other words, in the hiring process, I had misgivings about the people that I was hiring. And I overlooked those misgivings because I wanted to hire so badly. So again, I was hiring from a place of scarcity and not trusting that I would find the right person. So I would hire quicker than I wanted to or should have, I guess, or needed to, because I really wanted to fill the role. But what ended up happening was I filled it with someone who really wasn't a right fit from a values perspective. So I highly recommend not only hiring for skills and for responsibilities, definitely you need to hire for those things, but I also recommend hiring for alignment, optimizing for a values match, asking somebody what their values are, what they believe in, what matters to them, asking them about what they fear, what they struggle with, right? And really asking about things that give you insight into how this person operates in the world. So if you hire somebody that's all about results and outcomes, but they were willing to cut corners on their values in order to get those outcomes, it may be that you're dealing with someone who's going to cut corners on their values with you. So I'll give you an example. I had one employee who I discovered had misappropriated funds, let's say, and hidden it from me. And later I found out that when she would play volleyball, if she lost volleyball, she would get so angry that one time she punched a locker. Now, if I had known that before I hired her, that would have given me a clue into her personality, that she, could get really angry and violent if she didn't get an outcome that she liked. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily exactly correlated with that she lied or that she stole money, but it does show that she had such a desire to win and get her way that she would have inappropriate behavior if that didn't happen. And to me, that feels like a red flag. So you might want to ask somebody in the interview process, what does it look like when you lose? What was the worst way that you ever reacted when you didn't get something you wanted? So coming up with some difficult questions that people might not want to answer and asking them to answer them honestly can give you some real clues into how this person operates. Another thing that I really advise you to do, and something I didn't used to do, although it sounds like really good advice, is that talk to their old bosses. Don't just ask for a written recommendation, but actually get on the phone and ask the boss, what did it look like if this person didn't meet expectations? How would they respond? What were some of the challenges that you faced in leading this person? So if you can get on the phone with somebody that's worked with them before, you might get some deeper insights. All of the people, every single one of the people that stole from me, lied to me, let me down in some way, I didn't interview a past boss. I didn't interview someone that they worked with before. And I regretted that later. Another bucket is in tactics. And when I talk about tactics, really what I'm talking about is structures and agreements. So here's an example. I once had an employee who, when she left, she tried to take clients with her and then later lied about it directly to me. Now, as much as I think that that was wrong and obvious that she shouldn't have done that, I actually didn't have it in writing. I didn't have that as an explicit agreement that she wouldn't do that. Now, again, if I'd hired someone that was maybe more aligned with my ethical and my ethics and values, maybe I wouldn't have made that mistake. But we all make mistakes in hiring. And so one way to mitigate those is to have really clear and clean agreements. So from that employee on, every single contractor, coach, employee that I work with, I put a specific clause that they will not try to solicit any of our clients for at least a year after they leave, and that they won't solicit our own employees. So let's say somebody leaves and doesn't take a client, but they might take away one of my coaches or something like that. So we have that agreement with all of our employees, and now I'm including that as an agreement in my client agreement so that I have clients that they don't go and try to hire my coaches directly. So I'll have that agreement on both sides. So whatever behavior you actually know that you want, I highly recommend putting that into your initial agreement. I like to say if it isn't in writing, it doesn't exist. And the best time to create and negotiate agreements is before you start working together, rather than trying to introduce an agreement later in the relationship. Finally, let's talk a little bit about what to do when an employee does violate your trust and they do try to steal your content, your client, or money directly. Well, I highly recommend making sure that you have structures in place to immediately cut off the client. Meaning, in the past, before we were so technologically savvy, I would send my passwords to my employees. I would give them passwords one at a time. And then when they would leave, it would be this nightmare of trying to get them out of certain programs and change passwords. So I highly recommend having some structures in place, like using LastPass, for example, which allows you to share passwords with a specific user and then cut off access very quickly, and not to share the actual password, but just the access, so that you can immediately cut someone off from the structures in the business. That way that they can't do any damage, right? And then the next thing I would do is immediately do the inner work, do the alchemy, and then have a truth-telling conversation with the person face to face or Zoom to Zoom, just to make double, triple sure that you and that person really, that it's truthful, that what really happened, that they can tell you their side of the story. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to change anything, but it is, I think, a good idea to give people an opportunity to face you and to share with you. Now, that doesn't always work and it doesn't always matter. In my case with my employee that tried to steal clients, she didn't want to talk to me right away. She didn't want to have a conversation. She didn't want to face what she had done. And so, I was able to just put a boundary in place and say, all right, God bless you. See you later. But this is, we're not going to keep working together, obviously. So if this was helpful for you, I invite you to continue watching my videos. You can learn more about my programs, products, and services at superstaractivator.com/go. I look forward to meeting you someday.